Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Surely.
This can't be it. My name is Moesha Scott, your co-host.
Mine is Nomfundo Nyakane, your host. We are so glad to have you back.
Absolutely. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the also trendy quiet quitting and the not so trendy quiet firing. Yes. And we'll also be getting into employer theft, emphasis on employer, and how that impacts workers in the work environment.
Please don't forget to follow us on all our socials. Please see links below.
Yes, and please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. We love hearing from you. Yes, get ready to
listen,
learn, and engage. Stay tuned.
So now, Nompumelelo, before we start with regards to that, I would like us to look at last week's comments with regards to our topic on CVs and what were we talking about? CVs and contracts, right?
Yes.
Employment contracts. Okay, we have... I don't want to say her name wrong. It's Ayanda Amagugu Amahle. Amanda Amagugu Amahle was basically saying that when we are applying for a job and sending our CV online, her recommendations also is that we must write our the job that we are applying for on the subject line, which I thought it made a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense because I remember you mentioned writing your name.
Yes.
Which also makes sense. I feel like because the recruitment agency or the recruitment manager instead is receiving so many emails. So it's very important to be specific on what you are applying for in the subject line.
Yes. And then thank you so much for that, Ayanda. Another query that we had was from Darren. Darren wanted to know with regards to, when a lot of people are going paperless, right? So a lot of CVs are now sent via email. So he was saying, what if there's an individual that doesn't have access to Wi-Fi? It's something that we take for granted or can't even afford data. What will the best options be in terms of finding a job?
Okay, so I've been in that situation. So luckily or fortunately, there is in our communities, there's a lot of hotspot areas. So you'll go to your churches, you'll go to your civic centers, you'll go to schools even. There's hotspot areas. So a lot of people go there to send their things online still. And then if you still don't have access to that, you'll find posts on Facebook. We'll see if we can link those below. So they post on Facebook and then you can DM them your CV and then the whole process just takes off from there.
Oh yeah, another thing when I asked you that question, you told me with regards to, what did you say, Facebook free mode? What's that? How does that work?
So Facebook free mode is for mostly people that don't have data, but they still want to be in touch with the content in Facebook, right? So what you'll find there is everything that you can find when you have data, and then you can still access your Facebook and go through people's feeds and it still shows even if you don't have data.
So another question would be that these portals, right, where we have to submit our CVs most of the time are not that user-friendly. You might assume that they're user-friendly if you're working on a laptop or a desktop, but if you don't have these...
luxuries.
Yes, luxuries, that's the correct word. What then do you do?
Right. So, like I mentioned earlier on, there are still recruitment agencies that kind of simplify the whole process for you. I think depending on the job that you're applying for, but then you'll find other ones that help you apply for those. So they'll help you create the CV, they will provide food for you, transport for you, and help you with the skills required for any certain position. Yeah.
All right. With regards to the agencies, anyone that has more information with regards to the different agencies, their contact details, please share with us so that we can share with the rest of the community with regards to how to apply via agencies. And then thank you so much for that. And
sorry, you also mentioned earlier about the government post where you can still...
Yes, the advertisements still come out on the normal newspapers, right? And then they ask you to complete a Z83. So normally with those Z83 forms plus your CV, you normally submit them to your local municipality or that department, government department, the head office where the posts are, with regards to the posts that are being advertised. So that also helps in terms of the hard copies. But now I have noticed as well that it's not a lot of people that are taking hard copy CVs. So we're definitely going paperless.
Yes, basically that's where the world is going to.
Yes. And then again, another comment from Ayanda Amagugu Amahle. It's with regards to my journey and the registration of my company on CIPC. So basically, I'm going to read verbatim what she says. So, and to register, you can do it online pretty easily and quickly. Biz portal on CIPC does everything for you, including tax, UIF, and bank account. So that, yes, I did try to check it out, but with regards to the load shedding and the network in my area, it wasn't so good. I am in Lenasia. You know, we've been trending in the news.
Okay. So it simplifies everything, like we said. Gucci, the world is actually going online. So knowing Gucci, there's a lot of things that they are doing to make things or make the world easier for us. Gucci, you can actually do all of this online is mind blowing.
Yes. And another thing as well, we also have our law students here, like Valencia, shout out to you. Please, with all the law students as well, any topic that we comment on, and if you hear or if you know of anything that will help us with regards to our journey in making sure that we have a healthy working environment with regards to employees and with regards to the unemployed like myself that are looking into go to business. If there's any laws and, you know, things that we should be wary of, please just engage. Yes. Mpumelelo, what is quiet quitting?
Right. So quiet quitting is employees fully disengaging from any obligation that is not added into their job description, right? So last week we spoke about job descriptions and how it's important for them to be implemented in your contract, right? So this is important things to know before signing that contract. So what quiet quitters do is they only focus on what they are supposed to be doing.
So they're not willing.
The contract.
So they're not willing to go up and beyond the call of duty.
Yes, they are not willing to go up and beyond, like you said, because to protect their mental health as well. Yes, and then you find Uguti, they are not getting paid for the job that they're not supposed to be doing. So.
Oh yes, that's so true, because I see a lot of people in terms of work. You know, when they doing their KPIs, you find that you're so busy doing work that is not in your KPI. So it doesn't even count. And you obviously, things like overtime as well. So then with regards to quiet quitting, okay, from my opinion, I think quiet quitting was brought about by COVID. I'm not sure with regards to what's your take on what brings on quiet quitting.
I just think people are tired.
So is that not doing?
Not exactly, but it is another form of making a statement to employers, right? So the reason why people embark on quiet quitting is so people do when you end up doing more work than required and you're not being incentivized for that, and as a lot of people have mentioned, Uguti, in work you end up being burned out and doing way too much and losing yourself in the process. So
and lack of recognition, something that you might undermine. Lack of recognition, like that hostile environment, that can also contribute to quiet quitting.
Absolutely.
But then why don't you just quit the job?
So in our country, getting another job is very hard, right? So people would rather focus on exactly what their job what their job description entails than actually going out and resigning and then going and looking for another job, because that is hard, especially in the environment that we're in as a country.
But then doesn't it put you at a disadvantage? Because let me just give you an example, right? You've always overlooked your job description, so you've always gone up and beyond the call of duty, right? And then all of a sudden you decide to embark on your quiet quitting, right? Now you're doing what is required of you. Won't that then say that you were a low performer?
Not exactly doing, but I do feel Oguti, it is another way for employees to make a statement to employers about the working hours. And as a lot of people have mentioned, Uguti, in work, like the work environment can be toxic. So you find, Uguti, you are working the extra hours, you are putting in and doing the extra mile, and then you end up being burnt out, or you're not being recognized for the work that you put in. So that's another that's why people decide to embark on quiet quitting.
Yeah, but then now quiet quitting. Remember last week we spoke about job descriptions, right? So you're doing. Let me give you an example. You're doing basically with when you like how you're explaining it. To quiet quitting is when you're doing basically what's on your JD, right? Yeah. But now you've the company which you're always working up and beyond the call of duty, right? And then all of a sudden now you want to do the bare minimum what you are paid to do. Isn't that a way of rebelling? And then won't that put you at a disadvantage, Uguti? Now you're underperforming when come appraisal times.
I feel so. I feel like that is another disadvantage of quiet quitting? What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I would say Uguti it disadvantage, but however, you must remember as well, Uguti, first and foremost, most signing employment contract, right? You're dedicating Uguti, you'll give the job 100%. So if you have always been giving 100%, when you quite quit, for me, it's like now you're doing the job injustice because let's say Uguti, you were doing 5 people's jobs and you didn't communicate when Uguti you are over, it's too much, right? And then you just go quite quit.
Yeah.
So the other 4 jobs, what happens? And then with regards to your colleagues as well, I mean, I feel Uguti, it's unfair on them as well because now all of a sudden when you decided Uguti, family life is the way to go, your mental health and everything, it's all good and well. That is correct. You're fighting for the right reasons. But how you are fighting for those reasons, for me, I think Uguti, I would be, how can I say, against it? I know it's trending. I know some people go, goody. But no, but the thing is, if you're looking at it as well from the employer's side, half the time when people quite quit, it's not even the company that's making a person quite quit. The women I'm gonna call. Sometimes it could be a manager, it could be a supervisor. Yeah. But when the guy at the top, you're not even aware of Uguti, these things are happening at the bottom, So for me, I think Uguti, instead of quite quitting, consult HR and tell HR, Guti, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that's happening to me. If you cannot speak to your manager, that's my thoughts.
I feel like it's important to communicate it before you actually just decide to actually embark on that, so that people can be aware. Because, like you said, it is going to affect a lot of other people that say are on your team or the company itself, right? So I feel like another reason people are quiet quitting, like I said earlier on, Guti, people are finding themselves too stranded in their works that you can't even do anything else outside of that or have a hobby or whatnot. So that's also another statement that people are making. Like I said earlier on, Guti, you end up working to live rather than living to work.
But then communicate it.
Communicate,
because if you've always been doing it, now you're not doing it, then that's going to pose an issue for you as well. Yeah. Come restructuring, come retrenchment, you'll be the first to be let go because of now how this person was doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you want to do only 1. Yeah. I don't think anyone will understand why, And anyway, with those quiet quitters that are still doing their job, it's just that must leke and went, I wouldn't say slack. They've decided, Uguti, they want to look after themselves and, family life. Thank you to COVID because a lot of us were working from home. So we got the opportunity, Uguti. Now you realize this is what you're missing. You're missing to live, right? And with regards to going back to work, now you're working the long hours and stuff like those. I don't have a problem. I think the main issue with me would be the employees that would take the opportunity to quit and then push a side hustle because now they're affecting their colleagues. If you're pushing the side hustle after work, it doesn't matter. But if you're pushing the side hustle during working hours, now you're stealing from the company. You're stealing company resources by using their phone, their printer to do your stuff, and you could find yourself in big trouble.
So that's another thing that I mentioned earlier on, Uguti. Part of the reason why people go or venture into quiet quitting is so that they can have enough time to, say, start a side hustle, right? So it becomes a problem. It does become a problem if that side hustle ends up taking so much of your work because, like you said, it's you using the company's resources, using the company's time, and then
you're affecting your colleagues. Because now they're looking at you doing other stuff and you're not putting in the hours. That's what I'm saying. If you hired 8 hours, work the 8 hours and then do your side thing. And another thing as well, it will always go back. Our conversations will always go back to that employment contract. They'll always go back to that JD because now in your employment contract, right? Maybe they have said that you need to declare if you've got a business or if you're going to start a business, or maybe you're not allowed in some companies to start your own business. Maybe it's related to what you're doing at this current job. And when you didn't read the contract and you're starting your side hustle, or you think no one's going to find out, when it comes to a time, Uguti, maybe you do something and now they are checking you out and they find out what you've always been running a side hustle. You can get yourself into serious trouble. So to avoid all those things, guys, let's just stay on the legal side of stuff.
It goes back to what we mentioned, another clause that we mentioned last week. What was the clause?
The binding clause.
The binding authority. Yes. So, a binding authority, as we mentioned, Uti, it is a clause in the contract that mentions Uti the employer can add more work to your job description, even if it's not part of the contract or added into your job description.
Yes. So now, basically, with regards to the quiet quitting, right? I get it. The quiet quitting is with regards to the employee. You know what you've got reasons as why you are doing what you're doing, but then the employer, there's one thing what you said that's not so trending: the quiet firing, right? So while when you are doing your quiet quitting, the employer, whether they're in the right or they're wrong, they can start a process called the quiet firing. Do you know what that is?
No, what is that?
So quiet firing is actually the opposite of quiet quitting. With quiet firing, it's a passive aggressive way of pushing you to resign. So basically, Nami, you know, because quiet quitting I knew, but I didn't know about quiet firing, right? Yeah. They do it companies do it in subtle way you wouldn't even recognize this is happening to you.
So what are they doing? Are they setting traps for you, or just making the environment better for you so that you can?
Well, basically, a very hostile environment will be created for you. Sometimes HR is involved. Okay. Sometimes HR is not. So basically, obviously, it's they target the marginalized employees. Because of your race, because of your age, you could be discriminated against, or because you're the big mouth, that sees what's happening in the company that's right and that's wrong, and that's always, pushing other employees who know these people are not treating us fairly. Why are we working under these conditions and stuff like that, right? So they can target you around that. So, next week we're going to discuss in depth with regards to quiet firing, because now there are many signs that show Uguti now they are quietly firing you. In the good old days, it was called constructive dismissal. So we will show with regards to how will you identify Uguti this is happening to you before it even happens, because now, Angeti, you're not productive, or the manager doesn't like you, or whatever reasons they are, valid or not valid, right? Yeah. And then they're trying to get rid of you, right? So that's when you'll find yourself, you target Uguti now. This is happening, So sometimes to recognize, not to say a lot with regards to what we're going to discuss with regards to quiet firing, you recognize small little things like Uguti, unattainable targets will be set up for you. Uguti,
that was my next question. Yeah. How do you know? Yeah, what are the small things that they set for you?
Yeah, they pass you over with promotions. You get excluded with some emails. When you're given information to do work, it's not with everything that's complete. Sometimes you write things and there's no feedback. Other signs is that the employer would bring up a structure. They are coaching you, they are trying to prove, but then it's the employer gathering evidence for themselves. We try to help this person out, but they're just not achieving. So it's in its own way, it's like entrapment, But then at the same time, I could say for the employer, one thing they don't realize, they could also be putting themselves at risk, especially if the employer is aware. HR is involved as well, and everybody's involved. You can resign because you're being pushed to resign, but you can come back to the CCMA and say, look, this was constructive dismissal, and they could be bordering through things like about discrimination against your race, against your age. It brings into factor things like bullying, So with regards to supervisors or managers that are quite firing people, what I would want to say, and it's something Uguti is close to my heart. Uguti, when you are quite firing someone, you must remember the long-term effects, because remember, now you are degrading this person, humiliating this person, you're making this person question themselves, Uguti, am I? So it's just to get rid of this person now, but in terms of a person in the after effects, the aftermath, the damage that you would have done. So, there's no company that actually admits they are quiet firing anyone. Of course, yeah. They won't, or any manager that would admit, but it happens. But then, next week when we discuss it, I think a lot of people will see Uguti, they've either witnessed it or have been through it. Yes. So then another thing as well with regards to quiet quitting and quiet firing is the employer, the one that you spoke about, the employer theft.
Yes.
What's your understanding with regards to employer theft? And then I'll explain to you what my understanding is.
Okay, so employer theft, in my understanding, like we mentioned earlier on in quiet quitting, I do feel as if I do feel like it is another cause for employees to go into quiet quitting. So employer theft is when the employer robs you of what is respectfully yours.
Yes. So that is correct. It's one of the reasons, with employer theft, people always, if you check internet, right? I Googled, I checked my, because just to make sure with everything that I'm saying is correct, right? In terms of employer theft, there is not a lot that's been said. Yeah. In terms of employee theft, there's a lot. Policies and all those things, but do not steal. It's wrong. But in any case, there's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of employer theft, where it talks about where another employee being robbed by the employer, what do you do? Yeah. There is like minimal information. There are examples. The restaurant that I was telling you about, the watrons were expected to pay 3% commission, right, in terms of total sales of the day or of the month, right? And then they were paid 3% commission, right? And then they were expected to pay things like breakages. They were expected to come in, like if your shift is starting at 7 o'clock, you're expected to be at work at 6 o'clock to clean, right? And then they had to contribute towards this thing, the runner, right? So basically you're paying the person to help you at work, you're paying to clean at work, you're just paying. And then, it normally happens with regards to low income groups, whereby, you barely even reaching the minimum wage, because if you had to calculate 3% commission of sales, how many customers did you have? How much did you sell? You see, so I don't think they can even go above 1.5 a month. So you're relying on tips. That is the company
also fall part
because now some restaurants, they actually take, so it doesn't only happen in hospitality, it also happens in construction. Do you see those guys like in the corners, and there's a whole group of them, and then a car stops and then they all go running, and then so it's someone, obviously, like it is December now, we want to make our houses look nice and all those things, right? We want someone to paint, we want someone to do the garden, we're building a wall and stuff like that. So then we're not, you are an employer because you're hiring someone, So when you bring in the person to do your garden or to do your painting and stuff like that, I think you've negotiated to the minimum. They've told you initially, this is my worth, and then when you want a discount, every time you're asking for the discount to go lower and lower and lower, that is you also being an employer that is stealing from someone, from an employee. Because now, and a sad thing is that the reality of the matter is that, a lot of people go for migrant workers that don't have documents, right? So it's easy, once the work is done, and then they can refuse to pay. They'll give some stupid reason why they won't pay, and then they won't pay.
And where do they go? Yeah.
They know you're not going to go anyway. So the only thing that to retaliate, what they can do is with these guys, whenever they see your car or whatever, they can tell the others, let's break that person doesn't pay. But that's the most they can do. Even with the restaurants, it's the same thing, Even
in corporate companies or retail or whatever. So you find you're paying for UIF, and then when you get fired or when you resign, then when you want to claim for that, then you can't.
Yes, I can't remember, it was Checkpoint or Carte Blanche that I was watching, whereby there were certain employees that were, according to them, UIF, like what you're saying, it's a valid thing as well. You need to find out, the UIF that's being deducted from your pay slip is actually being, paid to the fund, because come a time where you have to be retrenched, or come a time similar to COVID where there's nothing that can be done, you have to be at home, or to your claimer and dololo, your name is not even there, you've never even contributed anything, but according to your pay slip, you've always been paying UIF. Not only UIF, a provident fund. When are you busy planning your retirement, or you're thinking, no, I'm going to resign, I'm going to start a business, right? Now you do all these things. How? When you go to put down your claim, but your name is not here. So it's things that you need to be wary about, because that's the employer stealing from you, But then how the law would protect you is something that, please guys, engage with us with regards to how and what can you do if you find out that You thought you were paying UIF and you find out Gucci you were not, you know?
Or you find yourself falling under the people that are being stolen from your employees.
Yes, you know. So that's so true. So that is with regards to, but like I said initially, you know, I encourage everyone when we are speaking about any topic that we're talking about, I always I'm encouraging you guys, please follow up, read, do your own research. The BCEA, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, you must know it by heart. You're an employee. Please know it. If you're an employer, an entrepreneur, and you've got people that are working for you, please also know it so you know how to treat other people fairly. But this document is very, very important. You know, like now, please, quiet quitting. We spoke about it, right? Quiet firing. We're going to go into depth next week, right? Employer theft. Please check Department of Labor. You know, the fund that they're saying you're contributing towards the Provident Fund. Find out if they're actually contributing towards that. So all these things. Another thing as well with regards to employer theft. I was listening to the news yesterday, right? Domestic workers undermined, you know, underpaid, you know. I was very shocked. I was listening to the news and I was like, how? So they were talking with regards to something I wasn't even aware of. Apparently it's a thing that's been happening for a long time. Okay. January to December, someone's working. December, they tell you, it's holiday. We'll see you next day, but we'll call you, you know. So our gogos, our mothers, our aunts, umuntu is waiting, thinking that they're going to be called in the new year, right? And they don't get they don't get called. They've got a case at the CCMA, by the way. You need to go report it. But you have to report it within 6 months. This is what happened to you. There's a difference. An employer is laying you off because they can't afford. But they can afford, but they're just laying you off because number one, babaligela upatala the severance package, especially if you've been working long for them. So it's things that you need to be aware of. And then if you're working anyway and you are earning below the minimum wage, it's something you as well. And you're working 8 hours and you don't have lunch and stuff like that, you need to report it.
So now we are going into our next segment, which is Diaries of an Unemployed Employee.
Yes, well, again, procrastination. A lot has been happening in my life. So I couldn't really register the business. There was a lot of issues with a lot of power cuts, a lot of load shedding, you know. I'm sure the whole country was experiencing that as well. So I know that it's not an excuse, but I've also been having a lot of network issues. So I haven't, you know. But now I know which I can do it online, you know. So it's one of those things which, yes, I will do it. However, I have started in terms of the business. So the business is not waiting for me to register to start the business. Production has started. It's just that now I can't do anything until the business is fully registered, you know. My only concern is that, you know, watching what's happening now in our country, and I think you guys have been hearing me saying a lot, you know how this load shedding is affecting small business. You know, if you've got a small business, this 4 hours in, 4 hours out, I don't know how small business is surviving. Kudos to the guys that are still hanging there, you know, because now, honestly, it's very hard to work at this moment, you know. I can see even with us with recording our podcasts, you know, we do a lot of cuts. We'll do it and then we'll have to stop because of the load shedding and then we have to resume again. So I can just imagine with regards to someone that's working with a business that has to pay rent, how are they coping with this load shedding?
Okay. I feel like that wraps up our episode for the day.
Yes, grandchild is calling mommy, yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm like rushing now. But yes, like we said, we enjoy engaging with you guys. So please be sure to comment down below on your thoughts on the show today. And like, share, subscribe as well. And follow us on our socials as well. Yes. And
surely.
This can't be it. It's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.